Hi, Linda.
Hey,
How are you?
I'm good. Glad to be here.
Oh, look, you always just have this beautiful color composition
Oh,
happening
thank you.
behind you. I love the blue on you.
Thank you. Put it on for this.
Yeah. So we're talking editing. You have some editing questions?
I do have some editing questions. Is it all right if I also ask you another kind of a question?
It's your hot seat and you get to just pelt me with the questions. It's
Okay.
yeah.
And so how will this go?
So how we do it is you obviously because you're in my class, you're in Top 3 Book Workshop, that I can pretty much talk to you about any aspect of publishing you want, whether it's the creative side, from book development to writing to editing, or the business side, publishing, marketing, etc. So you hit me with the questions you want to ask me, and I will answer them for you. And then we'll save a few minutes at the end if for the other people who are here, Don and Valerie are here, who might have follow-up questions.
Okay, great. So do we just get started?
Just get started. Just I'm on your hot seat. I'm on the hot seat. So you just get to ask me whatever you want.
Okay. So I have been coming up with all kinds of kind of like what's next kind of ideas in terms of, so I've been running a video course of getting comfy on camera. And I think in my process of thinking what's next for them, I'm also thinking, oh, should this go in the book? And I was wondering, how do you know when something like what you have for the book is enough, or if it needs elaboration, or that stuff should just be saved for the next book?
Okay. And you know what? I really want to showcase your book because I'm hoping it's going to be coming out soon, as in soon, meaning when it's ready, but soon enough that people can get their hands on it. Can you just share briefly who you're writing for and your core message?
Yes, so the name of the book is Delight in the Limelight. It's for entrepreneurs and business professionals who want to gain more visibility through speaking, whether that's online or in front of people, but find that it triggers a lot of nervousness in them. And this book promises to help them through that in a way that gets down to the root causes and clears it away.
Yes.
And also, and I think I usually put a period there, but it's also a book on how to become more fully self-expressive.
Mm-hmm.
So that once you could, because after a life of inhibiting yourself, then you want to replace that with, well, what does it mean and feel like to come out?
That's what I love about your book so much is the thoughtful, careful process of the unraveling of all that was not natural or good or was imposed upon us. And so that now it becomes a freedom of choice of how to show up in the world. And it's so beautifully purposeful every step of the book.
Well, thank you. Thank
So, so your question again was, how do you know how much of what you teach in real life you should put into this book? And how much should you save for a different book or maybe just where it is in the workshop? Is that the question basically?
Correct.
So the primary goal is to get your reader from point A to point B, to deliver on the promise as you describe it. And so if an exercise you're teaching in workshop is super helpful in getting them there, then absolutely include it. If it's an exercise that is helpful, but not maybe necessary to get to the promise, that might be something you reserve for additional content for your workshops. That's how I would make that decision. And also, not all exercises translate, especially with you. You've got meditations and movement exercises and so forth. Pretty hard to do a movement exercise and write it, I mean, if you've ever tried to read a yoga book, it's not quite as effective as watching someone walk you through it. But that's actually an opportunity for you to link to video resources, other resources available to people, and, to make sure you have some free resources in addition to your paid resources available for readers. What's an exercise that you want to include, that you were thinking about including?
I don't think it was something specific, but like I do have exercises in my chapter on expanding your free expression, where I think you read that already, where I suggested like reading a children's book and reading sentence, having a phrase where you emphasize the different parts of the sentence, or you like, I don't care, I don't care, I don't care. And just like how you can do that for 3 minutes. And when you play that way with the script, that you find new ways of delivering things that you come through your mind that actually are more playful and more interesting than you might have thought you would have done by rote.
Sure. So, you have a lot of exercises in your book that are really helpful. I think you're not short on them. You
Yeah.
always have something. So if you think it's the exercise that is really crucial to move the needle, include that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think one of the things I'm thinking about is like in the chapter I'm in now, I have a kind of like a very short thing on video, but here I'm doing a 6-week class on video.
Right.
So I'm wondering, does more of that, maybe I haven't, it's for tomorrow for me to work on. So maybe it will come out as I'm writing what it feels like, if there needs to be more.
Yeah. I mean, writing about video, that's tricky. But, stories are really helpful there. Descriptive stories that take the reader into the experience rather than instruction per se, or
Yeah.
in addition to instruction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's actually, I feel like that's something that I do struggle with is knowing what places should be or could be told in story versus instruction, because I can tend to be instructional, I think.
Well, I think you can do the instruction, especially, people want to follow templates and rules and steps. That's our natural tendency. We like that. Then maybe if you have an example of how it could go, and it doesn't even have to be a true story, it can be imagine if, or so for example, if you try XYZ, you can create a scenario as well that just helps people process it and visualize it. Think of it like that.
Mm-hmm.
Does the reader need to visualize the instruction you're taking them through? And if they do, then please write a little story, either based on a true experience from you or someone else, or an imagined scenario to help them process.
Yeah. And that actually speaks to a related question I had, which was about learning styles. And you just mentioned kind of lists and organize, and like taking people through a process or having a visual that helps.
Well, would you get up in your workshop and show them? If you're getting up and showing them something, if you stop what you're doing and get up in the middle of the room, or get somebody to work with a partner or something, that's a good place for, okay, if I would get up and demonstrate this, then I need to demonstrate this in the book, but through story.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. It's an easy way for you to decide.
Okay. So, how much time do we have here? Because I'm going to expedite my questions.
Half an hour. So
Okay.
we got a 5-minute. So 12:35.
Okay, fabulous. Okay. When you are editing, like what gets you excited when you look at, Laura, I liked your face there. What gets you, like, what captures your interest and kind of like says, ooh, I want to work on this?
Oh, you mean as an editor? What do I?
Yeah.
Oh, I've never been asked that question. Um, I love a story. I love to get into a story. Um, Mostly it's heart. I think it's when I can see that that a writer really cares, and that they have something that they believe in wholeheartedly. Then I just want to get in there and help them make that shine. I just want to help them do anything I can to make it shine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not interested in working on something that somebody threw together, or that they have. You don't feel them in the words. You don't feel them um, in the descriptions. You don't feel them in the communication with the reader. There's usually no communication. So I love to see the heart, and then I can work with anything if the heart's there.
And so what are some of the things, like, can you describe, or even like when you're editing your own stuff, like what kinds of things pop out at you? Like, what do you notice when you start reading something? Because what I'm looking for here is to kind of piggyback on someone who loves editing, a professed editing lover as yourself, and how I might kind of embody some of what it feels like to you when you are like in front of the page and you're going
So
through
you want to
something.
feel how I feel when you edit your own stuff?
Yeah, I'm curious what you feel. Yeah. And what like captures you, and what things like pop out that you want to
Well, I
fix.
mean, so there's the utilitarian stuff that any editor has, their little ticks, the things that they spot with an eagle eye, and they'll just go through. Usually an editor will go through, and myself included, I will go through and get rid of the stuff that annoys me. I have my own little mental checklist of things I want to just get out of the way, so then I can see what there is to see.
Mm-hmm.
Once that's done, it's really about, I personally love helping writers simplify.
Mm-hmm.
Often there's too many words used, and that's because when we write a first draft, and this is appropriate, there's nothing wrong with it, but when we write a first draft, we're still figuring it out. So we use too many words, and we repeat things, and we try to figure out the right way to say it. I love a simplification, and I'm a big fan of considering the reader. So I enjoy going through and identifying places where we might need to get in touch with the reader and how they're feeling about whatever you've just imparted to them. As you know, I'm passionate about that. I think we forget sometimes that it's a conversation you're having with the reader. And if you were having a conversation with them in person, you would be mindful of the things that you were saying to them and how it affected them. So
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy looking for those opportunities.
Yeah.
And I think you would enjoy, if you go through and do we talked about this editing retreat,
Right.
your reader journey pass, where you're just
Mm-hmm.
considering
Yes.
how they feel at each stage, is really helpful. And sometimes it only requires a surgical little edit that just creates enough magic that they still feel seen and heard.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of editing passes, one thing I would love to have in this book come through is a sense of humor. And how do you identify the places that may call for lightening up, or that can hold that, like, or how do you even like, because I feel like that's something, well, I know like Mike, obviously has his own sense and you have your sense, but when you write for him, I'm always struck by the humor that comes across.
Mm-hmm.
And is that an editing pass, or is that like come from the original writing?
So both. It's definitely both. So he writes wacky stuff. He likes to write funny stories and go off on tangents, and he has phrases he likes to repeat. And then I know his sense of humor, so I'll go in and sort of do that surgical inlay. Or say, okay, we could. It's not really even it's not even scientific. It's just, oh, this could be funny here. This could be a bit. But always respectful of the reader, right? Never going to some extreme where it's just shock value. They have to always be in on it. So whatever your humor is, it can't be an inside joke. It needs to feel like it's meant for them, but it can't feel like no one can access it. So it's a little bit tricky. And the way that you get that is by familiarity, remembering that laughter is recognition. So you can always inject humor into a manuscript when you look for humbling moments of familiarity. So where you can be open and talk about the silliness, the oops, mistakes, the things that we can all agree to laugh about as our common experience. You will always get humor in that respect. So if you lean on familiarity, what you have in common with your reader in terms of experience of processing this same information, dealing with this same topic. So he can go a mile with humor around the daily grind of an entrepreneur, that sort of thing. But he also has established, and this is something you can do as well, a persona. It's not fake. It's him. He is this dude who probably, is sitting at the end of the bar at Applebee's and has some business advice for you somewhere in Jersey. It's a little upscale now, but I guarantee you I think it was at Applebee's that he wrote his first business plan on a cocktail napkin when he was 23 years old, in fact. So I say this because the persona piece plays like this. He'll think of a story that is part of this kind of dude that he portrays, and it'll be a real story. For example, in Fix This Next, he has a story about how he had once hosted the most legendary failure of a frat party in the history of his frat at Virginia Tech. How does it relate to business? We made it work. But it's the kind of story they like to hear from him. So if you can decide, I'm this kind of person, this is who I represent, and then you've got other stories like that. He probably has, dozens more, and we're on book 8. So you can pull funny stories that don't have anything to do with public speaking or being afraid to be on camera, but that at least showcase you in a humorous way. We like to laugh at other people's experiences, especially when they are similar to our own in spirit, right? In spirit. So people love stories. So do the humor through story.
That's actually helpful. It brought some things into my mind.
Oh, good. I'm so glad.
Yeah. Because I'm thinking about, talking about self-expression, we all kind of bring different parts of ourselves to different situations and different people. And one of the places where I'm probably my funniest is with my daughter, who thinks I'm hysterical. So thinking...
So if you've got a Gen Z who thinks you're hysterical, you probably are hysterical. That's it. They're, I mostly get a stone face from my. What is that side of you?
I don't, it's almost that I don't see it myself. She sees it in me and kind of highlights it as she, laughs at, I don't know, like last night I had a family meeting about the sponges in the sink and asking, okay, here's a dirty sponge and a clean one. Which one do we use the dirty one for? What do you use the clean one for? And they were saying, okay, well, Linda, you have something in mind. What do you use them for? And they were just rolling with around this, so I guess it's,
that's funny in and of itself. Last night I had a family meeting about the sponges. Yeah, that's funny in and of itself. If you can bring in funny little things like that about yourself and your own quirkiness. Quirkiness is good. When we humble ourselves, it's good. It's not funny when we laugh when other people make mistakes or do quirky things or don't fall in line or struggle in ways that are not too painful to listen to. And sometimes it's humor, even really dark humor that people want, seeing the humor in dark times. So, there's that video going around of the family in the UK that's singing One Day More, but they adapted the lyrics and for their current situation. And our current situation is not fun, but it was a delight to listen to their interpretation of what we're all going through. So there's that as well. But here's what I would say to you. If you can just keep track of when your daughter thinks you're funny and what she thinks is funny, then you can weave some anecdotes like that into your book. I'm reminded of something that David Tyerman said to me once. I was trying to decide which pseudonym to use for a book as an author name. And he said, what do the people who love you call you? And that's what your name should be. So the fact that your daughter is the one who loves you and sees you in this way, try and look at yourself through her eyes and then convey that in the book if you can. And you are a thoughtful person who is very attentive, and you understand yourself and you see things and make connections very easily. So I think if you just put the intention out there that you want to understand that, you'll get it. And those little sponge meeting anecdotes, that's hilarious.
I've also posted about P-rags on my Facebook. Have you seen it? No.
I did see that.
Okay, this is helping me. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. How do I know if how actionable something is in the book? Like, do I need to have a couple of readers now, read a chapter and tell me what they do? How far do I have to go with this?
Well, so number one, if something is actionable from your own experience trying to do it, from your own experience working through clients trying to do it. Mm-hmm. So it's not that hard to figure out, can a person do this in 20 minutes? Can a person pull this off this week? Is this realistic? Mm-hmm. I think, if it's a complicated action step, or you want to see if the order of things makes sense, you could just say, can I get you to do these exercises and report back to me? But I think you have a lot of experience. I mean, if a person's writing a book and they haven't worked with anyone on it, then yes, testing is really, really, really important. You, however, are testing all the time with clients and yourself. And so I think you can probably tell. And actionable for a reader, though, has to be something they can do in a relatively short period of time.
Okay, relatively short means minutes or days? Or
ideally 15 to 30 minutes.
Okay.
If you have deeper work you can still ask a reader to do deeper work that takes more time. I certainly am. I'm writing a book about writing a book. So there's a lot of stuff that has to be done. But if you're talking about, say, action steps to solidify understanding of a chapter, keep it short. You have a lot of exercises that that take longer to do, that take reflection, and that also can be done over and over again. Mm-hmm. So in that case, it's just a matter of setting the expectation for that, being really clear with the reader. This is something might take you longer to do. This is something, and this is something you can do over and over again. And also being clear about, why does it matter? Sometimes people put an action step into a book and they don't really say, I want you to do this because it will get you this result. And if you don't do it, then you will, the results will be diminished. And it will really be helpful to you. So if you can carve out a little time on this day. I mean, somehow Julia Cameron got millions of people to get up in the morning and write for 20 minutes every freaking day in Artist Way. So if she had come to me, if this was a new book and she was in my class, I would say, that's a lot to ask of people, Julia, So, but she still got people to do it. How did she get people to do it? She made it seem like this was a crucial, if you do nothing else, do this thing, and it worked. So often you'll look at books and you'll see an action step at the end, and it just says, journal for 20 minutes or, meditate for half an hour. Okay, that sounds good. But if you tell me that if I do this every day, that within a couple weeks, I will have access to a part of my creativity that I didn't think was possible. Okay, that's a good, I get it. I need to do it. Or if I don't do it, I'm going to struggle. So it's clarifying, making sure they actually need the action step, making sure it's doable. Also looking at your exercises, what part of this could they do in a shorter period of time? So could I do just a piece of it? An example is the first call to action in Profit First is to open your Profit First bank account. Just open it. Because we know that if it's open, then it's easy enough to ask them to do the next teeny tiny thing, which is start depositing 1% from your bank account, 1%. And most people can do that without feeling anything. And so then that builds up over time. If we were to say, figure out your whole plan, all your percentages, and open 8 bank accounts, and the whole thing, that's the whole process, people wouldn't do it. Mm-hmm. You find the little thing you can start with.
Yeah, that's helpful. I have one last question. Is there time?
I'm just here, Linda.
Oh, okay.
Ask away.
Okay. I'm still, what's the word? Perseverating on how much time this is going to take me to finish the book and the editing process. So I talked to Page 2 yesterday.
Hybrid publisher. Yeah.
Sounds like she would be happy to have me, as part of their, what they do. And we were talking about timeline. And what I said to her is that my plan is to finish the first draft by the first week of May, and then then do the editing with you. Mm-hmm. And I would get it to her in the beginning of July or after the holiday in July. And how do you know? So I guess it's a 2-part question. One is, how do you know how much time is enough, or how to make enough time to fit it into a timeline? Because a lot of what I'm doing, it's not really word count. I mean, I have one chapter, my last chapter, that is not written yet at all. But I'm almost finished with chapter 11. I have chapter 12, but it's completely populated. I just need to rewrite it. But I know there's going to be a lot of there are all the editing passes I want to do.
Yeah. Well, you've done a lot.
That's part A. That's my A question.
Okay. Do you want to ask B, or do you want me to answer A first?
Answer A, and then I'll get to B.
Okay. So first of all, let me just say that you've already done a lot of editing. So it's not as though you have a messy first draft and you are going to have to wrangle it into submission. You have already done so much editing. You are so careful and thoughtful. Mm-hmm. So keep that in mind. I think you're going to be able to get through editing passes pretty quickly. If I were you, I would allow a couple of weeks to get through editing passes, maybe 4, depending on what else you have going on. And then I know we have some one-on-ones scheduled. So I think that's about 3 or 4 of them, if I remember. So if you would be doing yourself a fine favor to allow 2 months, and you will not go crazy in those 2 months. You will feel fine and you will feel happy.
Okay. So
But
then
you need to
thinking
be
about
done.
May and June, it could be enough.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And you're
So
also going to have Amanda. She'll also be editing you.
that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. So although she's planning on reducing it, the developmental editing, since I'm working with you.
This is what I'm talking about. Yeah. And yes, and your book is already in really, I think you're underestimating how much work you've done already.
Oh, good. That's very helpful to hear. So the related part of this is, like I heard what you said earlier this week when I asked you this question about, do I focus on the book or do I keep running my programs? And I spoke to Laura a little bit about this as well. And what I think what I'm struggling with is that I have a small community of people. Okay, there are 12 people in my online class, and I did just have this retreat with 5 other people. I feel like this is a seed of a really tight community, and I don't want to just say, see you later, I'm going off for 3 months to finish my book. I almost feel like this is part of the business, I mean the book building platform. So, and yet whenever I run something, it's so consuming, as you know.
Mm-hmm. Well, what can you do for them now that might not be as time consuming?
I guess that's the question.
Yeah. How can you keep the group going?
Yeah.
And maybe check-ins, or maybe limiting the amount of time that you're spending. There's a way for you to pull it off. You just have to block off the time for the book, and then maybe, but definitely now that I understand this deeper knowledge about it, I wouldn't, if you've got a beautiful community forming, you want to nurture it for sure.
Yeah, that's what I feel. And also I want to build it. Like an easy thing would be for me to just run this class again, but that may not serve the people who are in the class now and want the next thing. So I feel like there's almost 2 things going on. Then I think 2 things going on, maybe that's going to be too much for my brain.
Okay, so
I mean,
speaking of,
with the book, not, and so like you're in this similar place, I think.
well, except that it does serve my students to continue to teach class, because students keep coming back to class because they want to hear it again, and that might actually be true. So why don't you poll your people?
I'll do that.
And ask how you can serve them, and give them a couple options that you think are workable for you. I am a huge fan of letting alums audit. This is really working for me because my goal is to make sure that students actually finish their books, and it is not a prescriptive process. There are few of them have finished in the 14-week span, but really it's a process. Everyone has lives and other things that happen, as you know all too well. So imagine if you were cut off from it. It would not be helpful to you. You would still sort of be figuring it out. Your students may feel something similar. They may need a reinforcement, especially because a lot of what you share is deep stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You like I do, you are a visionary who is changing the mindset around being seen
Mm-hmm.
and expressing yourself. And that isn't easy to do in just one class.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I will poll them. It's a good idea. And I'll do that.
Yeah, I mean, at a minimum, having a weekly meeting with them,
Mm-hmm.
it might just be enough to let them talk about the things that are coming up for them, and see each other and see you. And sometimes that's just enough. And you don't have to prepare for that.
Mm-hmm.
You can just let the group talk to you and get what they need from you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Is that it? You got all your questions
So
answered?
let me just I did.
Well, thank you for joining the hot seat. Those were good questions.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I think we're done. Are we done with hot? Are we doing more hot seats, Laura?
We are. We have additional hot seats happening next week. And those specific dates, I have to figure out what day today even is. We've got a hot seat on Monday the 6th and again on the 9th, which is a Thursday. And they're all at 12 o'clock Eastern time. Same place.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for bringing your questions, Linda.
Thank you so much for answering them.
And if anybody who's watching this recording is looking for a great class, top 3 book workshop, we start again April 13th, and then we have another class in the fall. So you can also check it out at ajharper.com, and you can also just message us if you want to be on a hot seat. You can message Laura at ajharper.com. Oh, Valerie has a question. I forgot that we were going to open that up. Hi, Valerie. Yes.
Hi. My question has to do with, you were talking about funny stories, and I'm finding myself, when I think of any point or any story now, just sort of writing it down wherever I am. But do you have a suggestion about where to put it? You may not know where it's going to go ultimately. So how I can just sort of have my list of stories?
About where to store it?
Yeah, so I may have a story that I think, I think I'd like to find a place for this story, but it may not be obvious. So Linda found this thing about sponges. She may not really know yet how that might relate to her book exactly, but you'll find a place. So for now, just to sort of put it, one of my biggest challenges is organizing information. And I just find that I keep throwing things into this document. I know I need to tighten all of it up, but in the meantime, for something like that, I just didn't know if you had any suggestions.
I honestly just store things in a Word doc or a Dropbox, different types of stories, and you can store it in Evernote, you can store it in OneNote, you can store it in Scrivener, you can just use Dropbox, you can drop it in.
So you don't put it in your main document. You would just sort of store stories somewhere that you can draw from.
Sometimes.
If I know it's going to go in my book, then I will probably put it in my main document where I think that it might go. Keep in mind, though, Valerie, that I have a pretty good sense of where I'm going to put things when I think of them. When I think of a story, I know where it's going to go. So, if you aren't sure where it's going to go because you haven't worked that muscle yet of learning how to do that, then just store it in a place and leave yourself breadcrumbs, though. You don't want to just give yourself little words. And what did I mean by taco meat? What is taco meat? I don't know. What is that story? I don't know. Or later, for if Linda if she wrote down sponge, that wouldn't actually be helpful to her. 2 years from now, for example, she might remember, but it would be much easier if she wrote family meeting about sponge usage, and then she would know. And if she thought it could possibly connect to XYZ, to put those potential connections there as well as just little notes for yourself about what you're thinking at the time. We always think we'll remember with just a couple little scribbled words, but we won't.
Okay.
We'll not. Yeah, sure.
That's a good tip.
Oh, all right. So thank everybody for joining, and I will see you on the next hot seat.
Yay. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.